What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our Week 19 Top 25. As always, I have Ty joining me to break down this week's rankings. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below to be entered into our giveaway at 500 subscribers. And all you have to do to be entered into that is just be subscribed to our channel. But before I dive into our rankings for this week, we got to look at who dropped from the rankings. And we have three teams this week, being the Providence Friars, the Maryland Terps, and the Pitt Panthers. And Ty, which one of these teams is kind of most surprising to see here fall out of our rankings?
I would say Providence. I thought they were kind of hitting their stride in the Big East. Maryland and Pitt have been very inconsistent, especially Maryland. So I'm not too surprised they've kind of hit a cold streak here. But Providence looked like they were kind of heating up at the right time, but I guess not. They seem to be on a little bit of a tailspin here going into the Big East tournament.
And then we'll look at our others receiving votes, and we still have Providence staying there. And for me, I think this one is starting to tell which mid majors could make a run and pull some upsets in March Madness. And you have Oral Roberts and FAU, who we have had ranked at least a few times here, just missing the cut. And those two teams, are going to be very scary for whoever is going to be playing them in the first round. But Ty, what do you think of the other two teams?
Yeah, I think Northwestern has a chance to be dangerous just because they're very old this year. They have I think two super seniors in Boo Buie and Chase Audige, so that can always be a recipe for success in March. Obviously, they haven't been in the tournament, none of these seniors, so it kind of goes both ways. But I do think being an experienced team could benefit them in the tournament.
And then starting at 25, we have one of our new teams jumping in this week with the Kentucky Wildcats. And this team, it's been a while. We had them at number one in our preseason ranking, and it seems like they're starting to play more like a top 25 team. They did lose last week with a very questionable, ugly loss against Vanderbilt at home. But they are here. They are still the number three seed in the SEC tournament. They still have Oscar Tshiebwe. Antonio Reeves has been playing great this year, and this could be kind of like last year's North Carolina, if we're going to be completely honest. A team that didn't really do too much, kind of snuck in the tournament, got a decent seed, and then could make a run. And if you're looking for a team like that that could do that, kind of like the UConn, UNC, I think Kentucky's your team this year.
And at 24, another SEC team, we have Missouri. I think they have flown below the radar pretty much all year. They were pretty much ran out of their own gym by Kansas way back in December. I think a lot of people just assume that they weren't a good team, but they have been really good in the SEC. They have some really good wins this year. They get a double bye there in the SEC tournament, so they could make a run when it's all said and done, maybe even win that tournament on Sunday. And I think they have a chance to be maybe in the 6 or 7 seed range. And I think they'll be a team that could make a run of the Sweet 16 or could, get ran out of the building in the first round, like a lot of teams this year.
At 23, we're moving Creighton up here, and this is another team that I think you could keep an eye on. That could possibly make a Sweet 16, even Elite Eight run, just because this team has battled adversity pretty much the whole year with injuries and losing almost every game in conference by I think 3 or 4 points, and it's just been that way in all college basketball this year. But Creighton, if they can get a right matchup in the first two rounds, then don't be too shocked if they do make a run at this thing. But that's on the back of Kalbrenner. If he can perform and be the guy that he is supposed to be, then this Creighton team is going to be a tough out.
And at 22, we have TCU. This is one of my lower teams to keep an eye on. I think right now they'd probably be a 5 or a 6 seed. And I don't think anyone would want to play them in the first weekend because when they're healthy, they're a very good team. Obviously, you saw earlier in the year they went into Kansas and blew them out. So their ceiling is very high, up there with pretty much any team. But they've been very inconsistent the last month or so. Now they're fully healthy and they've still struggled a little bit in the last few weeks, but they still have a lot of talent. And if they can start putting it together this week in the Big 12 tournament, I would keep an eye on them going into March Madness.
At 21, we have another newcomer in the Duke Blue Devils, and this has been a long time coming. They're on a 6-game winning streak as they beat North Carolina in the final game of the regular season for the season sweep. Uh, Filipowski has been excellent. Roach has been great, finally playing what we thought he would be playing like the whole year. And here they are again, 23-8, sneaking around, not going to be a top seed, probably a 4 or 5 seed as it looks of it right now. And that's where Duke likes to be, under the radar. Not too many people are fearing them right now. And if they have a real shot at winning this ACC tournament. If they win that, well, then I think they might have a huge target on their back, possibly jumping up to a 3 or a 2 seed. So just depending on how this week goes for Duke, it's going to be interesting to see where they fall in the seeding.
We got San Diego State coming in at number 20. They get upset on the road this week by Boise State, who is a tournament team, so not a terrible loss by any means. And this program just continues to churn out 25, 30 win seasons. It seems like every year. It seems like I talk about it every week, but they're just one of the most consistent programs in the country and one of the more underrated programs. Another Mountain West championship, and they will be probably a 6 or 7 seed in the tournament. And this is a team that could just ride their defense to maybe even an Elite Eight, because they're very old. But I think their lack of scoring also could, cause them to get upset in the first round if a team gets hot. So it could go a lot of different ways for San Diego State. But either way, they're probably going to win 25 games once again. So hats off to them for another really good season.
At 19, we have Indiana falling 5 spots here because one, they got blown out by Iowa early in the week, like 22 at home. And then they escaped Michigan in overtime by 2 on senior night. And that one, really could have went to Michigan's way. If they hit a buzzer beater twice or, how to handle a late game lead. Indiana was kind of down in the water and really didn't have a choice, but they clawed their way back into it. So I got to give them some credit for that one heading into the Big Ten tournament. And that tournament is up for grabs for almost any team. For Purdue, obviously they are the heavy favorites, but after that, it's a crapshoot, and who knows where it's going to go. So Indiana could be top seed that gets upset in the first game, or they could go win the whole thing. It's just been that kind of tournament, and I think for Indiana's sake, they would like to at least win one game just to get some confidence back after two not ugly performances last week, but 2 performances they weren't really looking forward to and really thinking that would happen because it's the last week of the season and 2 home games to close it out. So I think Indiana, this is a kind of prove it week for me. If I'm really going to take them heading into March Madness, or if this is going to be another kind of fluky team that has got good wins but just can't capitalize when they can take advantage of those good wins.
We got Tennessee with a big drop this week, falling to number 18. They've been struggling for a while anyway, but now with Zakai Ziegler out, that's a huge loss for them. He was one of the best point guards, not only in the SEC, but one of the best in the country, just in how he can facilitate the offense. Really good defender. I think that's a really big loss for them. And I think their ceiling now is Sweet 16. I don't think they get much farther than that if they even get there. Tennessee struggled quite a bit in the tournament as it is, but now, obviously, with the injury, it's going to be even more tough. They'll be the 5 seed now in the SEC tournament as well, so they'll have to play 4 games if they're going to make a deep run in that. So tides have turned now for Tennessee. This was a team who had national championship hopes, and now, I think they'd be somewhat satisfied just making the Sweet 16. So unfortunate, but they were struggling anyway. So I don't know if the injury really killed their hopes as much as people would think.
17, taking a big jump up, are the Texas A&M Aggies after beating Bama at home for the statement win that they were looking for all year in SEC play. They finally get it with that win. And this is a team where they really just kind of not dominated, but slowly gained traction over time and is trending towards a 4 seed. But then again, this A&M team could get a wrong matchup and could get upset. And that's what's concerning me so far. I think they need to go out and prove it to me that they can go possibly beat Bama again in the SEC championship. And if they do that, then I think this A&M team could be a real threat in March Madness.
At 16, we have St. Mary's. It all comes down to Gonzaga for them. They get the rubber match. They each won at home. Gonzaga kind of ran them out of the building in Spokane, but now they get a chance to prove that they're the new top dog in the West Coast Conference, which has not been the case for a long time. It's been Gonzaga's conference for quite a few years. But now St. Mary's, after splitting the regular season championship, can win the conference tournament. And if they do that, I think they'll be probably a 4 seed and they'll be a dangerous team. I think a lot of teams and a lot of people don't really know anything about St. Mary's. They're always playing either really late or not on TV. So no one's really seen them play, but they are a really good, underrated team. And I don't think they're going to be that team that just, is a mid-major, has a good season, and then loses early. I think they could make a run this year.
At 15, we're moving Xavier up as well. And this one becomes, apparent that this team is legit under Miller. They beat Providence on the road by 5 as they take their 3-game winning streak into the Big East tournament. They're also the 2 seed in the tournament where, I think everyone thought this would be flipped upside down, almost how the, final standings came out, with Marquette at 1, Xavier at 2, Providence, Creighton at 3 and 4. And then where's Villanova? The usual culprit at number 1. And then there's always the team that no one saw coming at 2, and then it's your normal consistent Xavier and everyone down. But this year it's been different, and I like it for Xavier. I like their chances as well in this tournament just because of matchups. But losing Fremantle I think will be costly come tournament time. And I think, you said it for Tennessee. I think their ceiling is a Sweet 16, and I can kind of say the same thing about these Musketeers.
And at number 14, we have Miami. They win the ACC regular season title and get the 1 seed in the ACC tournament. So a huge boost for them. They haven't won the ACC, I think, in 10 years. Could be wrong, but it's been a while for Miami. So no matter what happens the rest of the way, it's still a great season for Miami. So they'll at least have that to hang their hat on. But they have that experience from last year. They made the Elite Eight, winning 3 games in the tournament. They bring back Isaiah Wong, one of the better guards in the country. So I think this team still has a chance to make a deep run this year. Guard play tends to be the most important thing in March, and they have it. So they could definitely make a run when it's all said and done. And we'll see if they can get hot here in the ACC tournament.
At 13, Kansas State is staying at 13 because they lost their regular season finale against West Virginia. But I think this team is more on the surprise side of things this year. We thought they would be okay with Keontae Johnson and how he would do in his first year back, but he has came out and been an absolute star, not just because of his story and whatnot, but because of how he has handled his first year at Kansas State, really making it look like he is going to be a good NBA prospect in the future. And I think it's going to be kind of the crapshoot for the Big 12 tournament yet again. For K-State, who knows? They could get bounced or they could win the whole thing. But when they go into March and they play mid-major, I think they should easily take care of business unless somehow it's like an Oral Roberts or FAU. And then after that, I think they can, beat a Pac-12, Big 10, lower seed and whatnot. I think this team at worst is going to finish in the Sweet 16, but at best, I think it's an Elite 8 finish. I don't see this team going all the way. Then again, you never know come March because we saw what St. Peter's did last year.
And number 12, we have UConn, a team that is seemingly starting to find its stride again after they started, I think, 15-0 this year and then just plummeted, going, I think it was 5-6 over their next 11, something like that. Everyone was writing them off. They were down to maybe a 6 or a 7 seed in brackets. Now they're up to a 4, maybe even a 3 seed. And there's a lot of talent on this roster. Adama Sanogo has been huge this year for UConn. So I still think if they can continue this run into the Big East tournament, they're going to be a really dangerous team in March, potentially Final Four, national championship ceiling. But, it's also a team that's shown it can play a very bad game and get upset in the first round. So I think this is going to be a really tough team to pick in your bracket because they could lose in any of the 6 rounds, in my opinion, just because they're so talented, but they're so inconsistent. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the Big East tournament. I think that'll give you a better idea of where they are going into the tournament. But either way, good luck predicting this team.
At 11, we have the Virginia Cavaliers moving up 1 spot. And this is, kind of shocking for them, falling out of our top 10 just because of where they've been. And that's just because last week they had 2 losses in a row, and then they rebounded this week 2 wins heading into the ACC tournament. So that'll give them a little momentum going into there. And then I think this is a team that could be a dark horse to win it all just because, they have the experience with Tony Bennett. He knows what it takes, and he knows adversity as well, just because of the upset loss we saw a long time ago as the 1 seed. So this Virginia team has experience as well. the ACC play, I think, has helped them this year just because not every team has been awful, I would say. Not awful, but bad compared to recent years where there's only been the top three teams that are really competitive. So I think when they go into it March and they face a Big 12, Big 10 team, they won't back down. And I think they'll put up a fight and possibly come out on top.
And back in the top 10 where they seem to belong is Gonzaga. They just are continuing to dominate in the West Coast Conference. Yet another conference championship this year. They play tonight actually against San Francisco in their first game in the conference tournament. And if they win that, they're already in the championship because of that weird bracket that they consistently do for whatever reason. But it's probably going to be Gonzaga and St. Mary's, like I talked about earlier. Rubber match to determine who really is the top dog in the conference. But I think Gonzaga's got a lot more on their mind this year. Yes, they're not quite the number one overall seed that they've been the last two tournaments, but it's so wide open this year that they have as good of a chance, really, as anyone to win the national championship. So I would not be surprised if they make the Final Four this year. It's been a while since they've been there. And obviously, they've kind of come up short as the higher seed. So maybe it'll benefit them this year to be on the 3 or 4 seed range, kind of playing the role of the underdog. So we'll see in March.
At number 9, we have the Baylor Bears, just falling one spot. And this one is just because of what we saw last week, losing to Iowa State. And what did they get? Oh, they get Iowa State in the first round in the Big 12 tournament. So I think this is a big week for Baylor. If they lose this game, then I would be kind of cautious of taking them in March. But if they win this one and maybe win another one and get to the championship, then, I think I might be taking this team. So it's a big game, not only for the Bears, but for a lot of people, I think, in bracket play and taking, pools as well. But, you've said it earlier in the season. You picked this team to win the championship last week in our video, and it always comes down to guard play, and they have 3 outstanding guards. George and Flagler obviously are the top 2 this year, and Cryer is great as well. And that's what it comes down to in March's guard play. And this team is definitely one of those teams. So if you're thinking, top guards and lots of scoring, I think Baylor's your team to take this year. But be cautious just because of how inconsistent this team can shoot the ball.
And passing Baylor is Texas, another Big 12 team. A tough loss to TCU, but they back it up by blowing out Kansas at home. I've had Kansas pegged as my current championship favorite for a while now, but Texas just ran them out of the building. And I think Texas has been very underrated really all year. And I don't think it can be said enough what they dealt with after losing Chris Beard, basically forced to fire him. And since then, they really haven't missed a beat. They've almost been better since he's been gone. And I thought this team would kind of just fall off, maybe be like a 7 or 8 seed in March, and losing the first weekend. But now they look like a team that could potentially cut the nets down when it's all said and done. Marcus Carr has finally figured out his shot selection a little more. That's been his big struggle over the last few years. But now Texas is another team with 2 really good guards that could make a deep run.
At 7, the Wildcats take a tumble down one spot as they lost to UCLA on the road by 6, but they still are the number 2 seed in the Pac-12 tournament, and they are a team that can score with a multitude of guys, with 5 players averaging 10 points per game or better. But really, Tubelis is the guy, and Ballo, is the guy as well. The 2 main scorers on this team that really they turn to when they need a basket. And Arizona is a team I think that could really make a run as well, just because they have more of a physical way of play, inside game, and then can kick it out for a lot of threes as well. This Arizona team could be a team as a 2 seed, I would say right now in March Madness. I think that's kind of where they're going to be locked up at unless they win this Pac-12 tournament. And they could be a scary 2 seed for a lot of teams.
And we got Purdue jumping one spot here to number 6. I think this team was the clear-cut favorite to win it all for a long time, but now they just have started to look really beatable. 5 losses and kind of a weak Big Ten. And I think ever since teams started to figure out how to guard Zach Edey and not let him score 40, this team has looked very different down the stretch of this season. Still a lot of time to turn it around. They'll be the 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They're not quite the number 1 overall seed that we thought they'd be. It looks like they're not even going to get a 1 seed in March. So the goal is still national championship for Purdue. They still haven't made a Final Four in 43 years. So even getting that done would be huge for them. But I think it still has to be national championship or bust with the crazy success they had in the middle of the season and winning the Big Ten championship. I think the sky's the limit still for Purdue.
At 5, the Marquette Golden Eagles are staying the same, and they beat Creighton on the road by 2. They're on a 6-game winning streak and 11-1 their last 12. So this team is hot entering the Big East tournament and March Madness. And I think this has got to be, the consensus surprise team of the year. What Shaka Smart has done with this team in his second year has blown expectations off of every roof, I think, that everyone had for this team coming into this year. Cam Jones and Tyler Kolak have been excellent. And, why not win the whole Big East tournament just to prove that this team is deserving of a 1 seed? Because right now, they're not giving them that 1 seed just yet. I think if they win a few more games and, if they do win the Big East tournament, I think they're for sure a lock to get a 1 seed, and they deserve it this year.
Now, at number 4, we have Alabama. This team has not looked the same since the Brandon Miller story broke. Obviously, he's still playing. They're not missing any players, but it's definitely been a distraction. I think that's very obvious now. Remember his first game back, they barely beat South Carolina at home. This week they barely beat Auburn at home, a fringe tournament team, and then they lose on the road to Texas A&M. Luckily for them, at 26-5, and with the great wins that they have, I think they're probably going to be a 1 seed, even if they lose early in the SEC. Maybe they just need to win one game to lock that up. They are not playing their best basketball, and this is the time when you need to be. So I think it's definitely, I don't think it's panic time, but you got to be on alert if you're Alabama here because they've had a lot of close wins and a couple ugly losses to go along with it. So it's not quite the dominant team that they were a month ago, similar to Purdue. But they'll still probably be a 1 seed, which means the national championship will be their goal this year.
At 3, we have the Kansas Jayhawks moving up 1 because of Bama's tumble. But then again, I know it's kind of weird because they're moving up 1, but I just think the loss in, Alabama struggles is more or less better than Kansas right now. They've been more consistent. As you said, since the Brandon Miller injury, Alabama hasn't looked like the same team where Kansas has. And the consistent thing about them is they just play in the Big 12 where more teams are just beating up on each other. They still came out with the number 1 seed after, finishing 13-5. Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick have been great. But outside of those guys, I'm very concerned if you're, really trying to look somewhere where a lot of people aren't. You got to look outside of the superstars and what happens if both of them go cold. Do they have a guy that can step up? And I honestly don't think I can say they do. And that concerns me for Kansas taking them as a national championship pick. But I do think this team is very strong and we'll breeze through the first round and second round unless somehow Michigan's playing. Then I don't know about that. Bias aside, I think this Kansas team is probably an Elite Eight team for sure.
And number 2, we have UCLA. I think this team just has not been talked about enough this year, to say the least. They sweep Arizona, the next best team in the Pac-12. They have absolutely dominated in conference play, going 18-2. Had a couple bad losses, but outside of that, they have looked very good this year. And people seem to have forgotten that Jaime Jaquez was an animal 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament. Still was very good in the tournament last year. And this year he's just been good all year. So I think the experience coming back for UCLA. Remember, they were an 11 seed 2 years ago, made the Final Four, lost on a buzzer beater. Last year they were still in the Sweet 16. So this team has won a lot of games in the tournament over the last 2 years. And I think that trend will continue this year. There's no reason to think otherwise.
At 1, staying at 1 for the 5th time this year. We have the Houston Cougars. And this team, if you want to talk about consistent, is the model team for this year. You can see on the top there, our preseason ranking was 6, and that's the lowest they've been all year. They're on an 11-game winning streak, 20-1 in their last 21 games. But it did come with some chaos as they escaped Memphis this week from the logo, if you want to say, because their logo's so big at Memphis. But they did win, and that's what good teams do. They win. It doesn't matter how they win or how ugly it is. They find ways to win. And now that it's March, luck is on their side starting off in March. And that's a big road win because Memphis is the second best team in American Conference. I think Houston is the clear-cut number one overall seed right now. There's no denying that unless somehow they lose their first game in the American tournament to, some team that no one thought they would win. But this is because of Marcus Sasser and what he's done. Last year was devastating blow when he went down for the season. And I think that team really could have won a national championship if he doesn't get hurt. And I think he's back this year to avenge that and possibly lead his team to a national championship. And with Jarris Walker helping him out, I think that's a very real possibility. But that's going to be it for our video this week. Make sure you guys check back next week with our March Madness content that we'll be putting out. A lot of content, our brackets, our video of all 68 teams ranked, and all of our picks as well. So make sure you guys are subscribed to our channel and hit that notification button to be up to date on everything we do and post next week. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.